Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Public Spend Forum webinar. This is part of our 10-week GovCon Boot Camp series. So welcome all boot campers. We are in the 8th week now of this, which is hard to believe. We've been working on this for 8 straight weeks, and hopefully you're getting closer to winning your first government contract, or at least picking up some good tips on subcontracting. We've got a good program for you today. It's the pros and cons of getting on the GSA Schedule Contract. Now, that is a siren song that many a GovCon sailor has heard, and it's a good opportunity. We're not going to say don't pursue government GSA schedules, but we want to make sure you do it the right way. And that's why I've brought on a special guest today, Marianne Wangman of Pater Consulting. Welcome, Marianne.
Thanks, Frank.
Marianne, we've gone back. We've worked on a few of these together, and I know we're all going to benefit from your wisdom. So a real quick plug for the founder of the feast today, GovShop. GovShop is our tool here at Public Spend Forum that we've created to make it easier for government contractors and government contracting professionals to get connected. GovShop's basically a LinkedIn and Google combined for government contracting. It's easy and free to use. If you all have not created your GovShop profile, do that now. I've said that in almost every week. So go create your free GovShop profile, start getting matched with opportunities through our accelerator subscription, and build your business. But our agenda today is to talk about how to get on the GSA Schedule Contract. And that's why I've invited Marianne. Marianne, I love your bio. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what makes you a GSA Schedule expert.
Sure. So I've spent a lot of years in the government marketplace, both as a federal employee, as a state government employee, and as an executive with EDS, which is the global IT company. I ran their GSA schedules. I've been helping companies get on GSA schedules for many years. I've written 13 textbooks on federal government contracting, which puts me in the category of I used to be a fun person, whatever happened to me. And I have run every aspect of federal business, from sales and proposal development, business development, through contract startup, operations, and shutdown. So I've been around the block a few times when it comes to the government business. I teach contracting officers and program managers how to do their jobs, how to evaluate our proposals, and so I have my finger on the pulse of what's going on with GSA and federal contracting.
Terrific. We both share that in common, in that we both teach government contracting professionals. I've had the pleasure of being in the classroom with them and helping them learn how to do their job better. And today we get to talk about, the people that are on the other end trying to figure out these bids and develop their own books of business. So for all of you in our audience today, this is a good topic. I'm glad you're here. Let's get into it. So what are we going to learn today, and how are we going to learn it? Well, after this session, we want you to be able to describe what a GSA schedule contract is and be able to understand the potential value that it might have for a government contractor. You'll appreciate the time and the effort that's required to earn a spot on one of these multiple award schedules, and we'll help you recognize the decision points that you should consider before you pursue a GSA schedule. Finally, we'll walk through the steps that are required and that you should really be aware of that would make your GSA schedule worth an investment of time and resources. So first off, a little introduction to GSA schedule contracts. What are they and why do they exist? Marianne, tell us, how has this evolved in the federal government to where we are today?
Sure. So, if you think about how federal contracting used to occur, everything was very siloed. So if you were a department within one agency and you were buying pencils, somebody 2 doors down was also buying pencils for a different department. There was no way, we didn't have business analytics back then. We didn't even have central locations for all the opportunities. They were off on a bulletin board someplace, and if you were interested, you had to go look at the paper copy, make copies of it, and be able to respond that way. So we've come a long way in that GSA is designed to be that one-stop shop for the entire government so that they don't have to re-procure things across multiple agencies. So if you think about what the government needs to buy from you, they need a contract vehicle, they need funding, and they need a bona fide need. So what the GSA schedule gives you is the contract vehicle that government agencies can use to contract directly with you. They still need they still have to have a bona fide need. They still have to have budgeting and funding, but they can get to you via a GSA schedule. So the slide we have up here is that what's happened is that GSA has been tasked with consolidating the types of things that the government buys all the time across all their agencies. And you see the list here. And if you provide a product or service that's within these categories, then GSA schedules might be something for you to consider.
And these are kind of like these are like schedule. I mean, I'm sorry. These are like catalogs, correct? So a GSA schedule is basically like an ordering catalog for commonly purchased goods and services.
Correct. So what will happen is once you go through the GSA schedule process, you put all the products and services that you want to sell to the government into your proposal to them. And then once it's awarded, all that gets uploaded into something called GSA Advantage. GSA Advantage is, as Frank mentioned, a catalog, so that contracting officers can just go to that GSA Advantage, find all the companies that are providing a particular product or service, and then they can make an award decision right there and then, or they can contact each of you to give you the opportunity to submit a proposal. But proposals are much easier because all you're doing is putting together your products based on what you already have on the schedule, your prices, which are already on the schedule. And the only thing you really have to decide is whether or not you want to give the government a discount off your GSA prices. So the proposal effort becomes much easier, as opposed to if you go out to beta.sam.gov, which was the replacement for FedBizOps, you're writing a full-blown proposal from start to finish, following sections A through M, to be able to get a contract. And once you do that, and you want to go after another RFP, you have to go through that same process again. Here, with GSA schedules, you're basically creating it once and then using it many times.
That's right. And that's why they are pretty attractive. And that's why a lot of government agencies will use them. You know, it's not just GSA, the General Services Administration, that has schedules. VA has schedules as well. So if you want to sell medical products to the Department of Veterans Affairs, you really need to be on their VA schedule programs. And the reason that VA has set this up is because VA is the largest healthcare provider, I believe, in the world. They obviously are going to buy dental equipment and supplies, medical equipment and supplies, and they're going to buy them often. So it doesn't make sense for VA contracting officers to go out and set up standalone contracts every time they need to buy cotton swabs or syringes. They have schedules for these where the items are pre-negotiated. The prices are determined to have been fair and reasonable. And those vendors who can complete those processes are added to the federal supply schedule for the Department of Veterans Affairs medical products. Now,
just interrupt a second. And I think it's really important that everybody realize this. First off, the word schedule and contract mean the same thing. So when you are working with GSA or VA and you get on their schedule, it means that you have a contract with them. Now, you don't have any money as a result of that contract, but you do have a fishing license and a right to sell. The second thing that's really important to pick up on is on this slide, it says 9 multiple award schedule programs. And that's what we're talking about here. A lot of times when you're doing something on beta.sam.gov, there's going to be one winner to a procurement. In the case of multiple award schedules, this is a different type of buying activity that the government uses where multiple companies will get on the schedule. So you'll be there, your competitors will be there, and depending on other schedules, you'll see other companies. So it's not like only one company wins, it's multiple companies that win.
Yep, that's a very important point that we're going to talk about in a few slides, the fact that it's like a hunting or fishing license. So hold that thought, because I want to talk really quickly about getting on, right? I mean, you would expect that to get on one of these schedule contracts would not be easy. So let's talk about the steps that a company has to take to get on one. Number one, I mean, before you should even consider pursuing one, find out if there's a schedule for what you sell. You can look at GovShop and go look at the contract vehicles listing there for GSA and federal supply schedules and see each of the 12 areas. Or you can go to the multiple awards schedule notice, and this is an active and open solicitation. Pull down, the service area that you think corresponds to the products or services you offer, and make sure, like, okay, yeah, there is a schedule here, and my products or services do fit. Is that correct?
Yes, it's very important, and there's a lot of breadth to these GSA schedules. So it's important that you look at the schedules, and determine if the particular items that you want to sell would be on them. Typically, in the old days, it would be that you had to get on multiple schedules to be able to accommodate your product line. They've tried to do a lot of consolidation so that you really only need to get on one schedule, so that they can minimize the amount of effort that you have to put a proposal together for a GSA schedule, and the amount of effort that GSA takes to evaluate your proposals and to manage the contracts after award.
And that's part of doing the homework, right? Not only finding out, is there a schedule for you, but another part of that is, does the agency that you want to sell to, because we've talked a lot in this boot camp so far about making sure your target buyers, do they buy from GSA schedule? Because just because every agency can doesn't mean that every agency necessarily will. So you need to do your homework, not just on making sure there's a fit for you on the schedule, but if you're chasing a particular customer, ask them if they use GSA schedules. There is a pretty big process of getting on. So you always want to know, like, who is negotiating for you. Tell us a little bit more about that, Marianne.
Sure. The only way so the key term here is authorized negotiator. And the government stipulates an authorized negotiator is someone who has a digital certificate and a authority to act on behalf of the company. So, for example, when I work with clients, some clients will be the authorized negotiator by themselves. Some of them will ask me to be the authorized negotiator by myself, or we'll do a joint authorized negotiator. And what that means is that you need to get a digital certificate on your computer so that the government knows if they've received anything from this particular computer, that it represents the intentions of the company that's submitting it. So, getting that taken care of is really important as one of the first steps to getting on the GSA schedule.
Now, what is GSA going to expect you to provide when you start to go through this process? What data do you need?
Yeah, so there's, first off, the schedule requirements can change at a moment's notice. So it's always good to go out to the website that Frank pointed out to make sure that you have the most current version of the solicitation and that you check it often. So some of the things that they require are an overview of your company, and they have page limits on this. So it's like 4 pages. So we're not talking about the 200-page proposals that a lot of us may be familiar with. So a company overview, they want to know about your quality plans. How do you ensure quality? Do you manage any subcontractors? How do you ensure their quality? They care a lot about your past performance, and they have 2 ways of verifying your past performance in terms of contract descriptions that you write up of previous contracts that you've had. They also may ask you to go through the ORI process. That's evolving right now, so there's some changes coming down the pike with that. But ORI is basically a subsidiary of Dun & Bradstreet, and they ask you to send a list of your customers' names and contact information to this independent company who will basically survey them, and the results come back directly to the contracting officer as well as yourselves. So that's another piece of the past performance. And then the government requires you to have descriptions of all your products and services. It requires you to have pricing for 5 years. GSA schedules can last as long as 20 years, but in the initial submission, they expect 5 years worth of pricing. They also want to know about some of your business practices and things like your most favorite customer, for example. And we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Definitely. And so when you compile all of this information, you're going to go and submit it through betasam.gov, right? Isn't that where the active solicitation is? And you can do that any time because it is an open solicitation. Is that correct?
You can submit it at any time, but you actually submit it through a special GSA portal.
Okay. We'll make sure to get that link and put it in the notes of this recording. And we also have a blog that we'll be releasing on this as well. So you will all have access to this information if and when you decide the GSA schedule is right for you. Now, the government can have questions when you submit your proposal. Is that correct?
Yeah, so after you collect all the data, they do a quick, and you submit it in the system. The contracting officer assigned will just do a quick look at your data and make sure that you've submitted everything properly. They're not conducting any sort of review at this point. They're just making sure you have all the pieces addressed. And then once they do that, it gets assigned to a contract specialist, and then they'll go through and in detail and make sure that they don't have any questions about what you've done. So you'll get a set of clarifications back, and usually you have like 3 to 5 days to respond to those clarifications, and you submit that back to the government. And once you both determine that they have no more questions for you and you have no questions for them, then you can go ahead and negotiate the final contract. So that's usually a conversation. And then you submit a final proposal revision with your prices, any changed prices that you have. And then you're awarded a contract with GSA, assuming everything goes okay.
I want to stick on this point about the questions for a second, because I've heard you tell some of your clients before that, it's not a standard set of questions. And, the GSA contracting professionals that are receiving your package, I'll just say there's a diversity in the experience levels that these people have. And so, do you have to respond to every single question in a certain way, or are there certain questions that you kind of need somebody with some savvy about GSA schedules before you answer?
Both. You're absolutely right. The range of, well, let me just start off by saying that there's a lot of internships in the federal government for contracting officer, a career path in becoming a contracting officer. It's a hard position for them to keep filled. So a lot of young, right out of college people are going into these internship programs, and the internship programs are sending a lot of those people to GSA. So it's kind of the luck of the draw as to what level of experience your contract specialist is. I've also noticed that, and so the questions that they're asking, so for example, I negotiated for Apollo Education Group, which was part of the University of Phoenix system. And they came back and they said our prices were too high. So I had the wherewithal to ask them, well, what are you comparing us to? And they were comparing us to where we were issuing credits and degrees through our program. They were comparing us to like a mom and pop training shop. So once I understood where they were coming from, then I could come back and say, companies that would be better suited to help you determine a reasonable price for our products and services would be these universities, so that they were comparing apples to apples. I will tell you that the government's gotten much better over time in terms of seeing where your prices fit in the overall scheme of things. I just did a negotiation several weeks ago with GSA, and they actually had a system that they were able to go into and look at where the prices we proposed fit in a bell-shaped curve of all the vendors that provided similar labor categories. And it was able to show us the mean of that bell-shaped curve. So, and basically the contracting officer had the authority to go 10% over that amount. That's something that is light years away from what they used to be able to do. I talked to the Office of Federal Procurement Policy Administrator at one point, and she was saying that one company in particular had over 1,200 contracts, and she, as the administrator, had no idea how much each agency was paying for each individual item. So you knew this company was selling many of the same products and services across the board to various agencies, But the one thing we could all be guaranteed of is that each agency wasn't paying the same price. So some agencies were getting great deals, and other agencies were, paying a premium for the same products and services. And the reason why that was occurring was because business analytics really hadn't been funded in the government back then. And now, when you're talking to the government, they have automated tools around business analytics that make them a much more sophisticated buyer than they have been able to be in the past.
That's great insight, and this is just a reason why you need to be aware of what you're doing when you pursue a GSA schedule contract. It helps to have the expertise of somebody like yourself. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about what you do after your spot is earned in a couple of slides, but I want to emphasize just a few of the prerequisites because I think these are really important. You don't want to spend a lot of time doing your homework until you know that this homework that you're working on can be submitted. So if you don't have 5 years of pricing history, is that a deterrent? Will you not be able to win a GSA schedule contract?
The government requires you to have 2 years of being a company before you can get on the GSA schedule. So that's the time element. What they do require goes back to your proof of prices charged. You have to show invoices for every product that you're going to put on the GSA schedule so that they can see either government agencies or commercial companies have paid at least the prices that you're proposing to the government. Now, keep in mind, let's just take a commercial example for a second. If you think about Walmart, there's a person in Walmart who buys printers, or multiple people that buy printers, and they buy printers day in and day out. So they know if there's a problem with chips, they know the trends of pricing, when to get the best deals. They know manufacturer specs. They know all that. They become very sophisticated buyers. And until GSA started, government buyers really couldn't be those sophisticated buyers, because if I'm a contracting officer, I might be buying toilet paper this morning and professional services at noontime and an F-18 in the afternoon. So as a result, individual buyers on behalf of the government, first off, can't get that sophistication in the products that they're buying or the services they're buying, because they're buying so many different things on a day-to-day basis. And secondly, the government is the largest buyer in the world. And if I'm buying my own stuff and Frank's buying his own stuff, we're buying these onesie-twosies, and we're not getting those economies of scale that a Walmart could get, for example, because they're such a large buyer, even though the government is a large buyer as well. So you have to show them who your most favorite customers are and what the amount is of the discounts that you give your most favorite customers, and the government expects to receive those prices for themselves. So all that is part of your original proposal that you put into them. There's also terms and conditions, both FAR clauses and other regulations that you want to make sure that you're aware of before you submit, to make sure none of them have dollar ramifications for you. We talked about the company information. You also have to provide 2 years of your financial information and then a lot of past performance data. I will say that out of all the schedule holders I've worked with, other than ones that made a business decision midpoint through that they didn't want to pursue this anymore, they had a change of leadership, there's only been one company that did not get a GSA schedule, and it was only because they had tax issues. So, if you have the wherewithal to go through this process, you will come out with a GSA schedule in the end, more than likely.
That's encouraging, and we do want to make sure people are aware that this is you can do this, but be aware of what your prereqs are. I think a lot of people also get hung up on the past performance. Like, GSA wants to see 3 past performance entries with another government agency, but if you don't have government past performance, but you've been around for 2 years, you have transactional history, you have some examples of doing deals with private sector companies, that still counts. And that's why we also recommend that you consider subcontracting. You try to find primes that are buying what you're selling, and do contracts with them, because those will factor in to, this past performance requirement if you don't have specific direct federal experience. Is that true?
Yeah. Example, think of a bullseye, and the most perfect past performance you could do is to provide the exact same products and services that you're doing on a GSA schedule to the same federal agency. If that's not the case, then the next ring out is providing those same products and services to another federal agency. If that's not available, you take the third ring out, you think about those same products and services or a subset of those products and services that you sell to state or local governments. And that proves that you can operate in a regulated environment. And then the fourth would be that you sell similar products and services to a commercial entity. The only thing the government's trying to do with your past performance is to mitigate their own risks, that you've done this kind of work before of a similar size and scope, and that you'll be able to do it in the government environment.
Fantastic. All right. So should you consider a GSA schedule contract, and should you think about getting a consultant like yourself to help? I mean, it's at least 3 months of effort, right? There are a lot of milestones and responsibilities. I mean, I think the basic attachment for the contract is like 30 plus pages of clause language. There's a lot to do. So in terms of your services and what you provide, like, what is it exactly that a GSA schedule consultant like yourself will do for a company that wants to get on schedule?
Sure. Typically, we'll have a kickoff meeting where we'll talk about the breadth and depth of what is about to happen and what needs to get done, so that we both have an overall understanding that it's going to take effort across the board to be able to get this done. And 3 months is really driven by the amount of time the company has. If they take 1 or 2 people and make them dedicated to this effort, you can expedite things. But, when other work requirements jump in, or there's not a dedicated person, or information is not forthcoming, that causes delays. So one of the first things I like to do with clients is check to make sure there is a GSA schedule available for them. I come up with a detailed list of milestones, and then we have a conversation around who's going to do what. So there are cases where I have exemplars that I can provide to the company so that they can not start from a blank sheet of paper. And then we'll start having those strategy discussions around pricing, about what products we should offer, what the competitors are offering, how we would stack up against the competitors. And then this would all be done in a weekly meeting to make sure we both stay on track. When we get all the data collected and reviewed by the company, we submit it in the online system, and then we wait for the government to have any clarifications that they might have, and then we answer their clarifications, and then we go through the negotiations process. And then we just make sure that everything is done in the way that's acceptable to GSA, because if anything's missing or incorrect, we want to get that corrected before we negotiate the final contract.
So it's an undertaking, and it definitely pays to have somebody like yourself kind of help you through it. Now, all right, let's fast forward. You won your GSA schedule contract. Congratulations. Now what do you do? What do you do right after you win that first spot? Because I think you'll find a lot of the work is now just beginning. So why do we call GSA schedules hunting or fishing licenses?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the government needs 3 things from you, 3 things to be able to buy from you: the funding, the contract vehicle, and a bona fide need. So if you are talking to an agency and you market your products and services to them, and they have a need for your product or service, and they have the funding available, and you have the GSA schedule, it makes it very easy for them to buy from you. So because it takes that whole procurement cycle that you would have to go through with beta.sam.gov out of the equation, it makes it a lot easier for the contracting officer. And if you think about a contracting officer's life, they're already overwhelmed with it because there's so few contracting officers, and there's so many contracts that have to be managed. So anything you can do to make their lives easier, they're obviously going to be a proponent of. There still will be competition. So if you're talking to them, they'll look at other vendors that have similar NAICS codes as you, which are the National Association of Industry Classifications. That's another thing I'd help you figure out. And they would find other companies with the NAICS code, and they're still looking for the best value for the government, but you can position yourselves in a much better light. They'll actually send you, the government, so what I just described are active efforts you would take to sell your products and services to the government, just like you do today, or to your commercial clients. But then the other benefit is there's a passive marketing effort where when the government needs to buy something, they can just pull up companies that have particular NAICS codes, and they can make award decisions just by evaluating 3 companies. So, and particularly if you're a small business, you have a keen advantage if you've gotten your certifications, because there are contracts that are only allotted to GSA schedule holders that have those certifications. So for example, if you're a women-owned business, GSA, any women-owned business opportunities that are set-asides will come directly to you so that you can make a decision to bid on it. Keep in mind, let me just explain the value of that, because I think we have a lot of small companies in the crowd. The government has socioeconomic considerations that they take into account that commercial companies necessarily don't have to do. So the government is trying to take that large federal budget and spread it out to not only the Lockheeds and Raytheons and Grummans of the world, but they want to make sure small businesses have their opportunity too. So what they'll do is they'll take SBA, Small Business Administration, sets quotas for every agency that they have to meet. And those quotas are for women-owned businesses, historically Black colleges and universities, Native American organizations. So each of these groups, these socioeconomic concerns, has a certain quota that's imposed on each agency. So if I'm Department of Energy, I've got a quota for women-owned businesses. And if I'm trying to meet that quota, I can do it one of 2 ways. I can either look at the Lockheed, the large prime contractors that I have, and say, okay, you now have to give so much of your business to a women-owned business. And that's one way that I can meet my goal. The second way that I can meet my goal is through a set-aside contract where only women-owned businesses can apply for it. So if you have any of those stipulations, if you meet any of those socioeconomic considerations, there will be a contract opportunities available for just that economic consideration. So you're not competing against a Lockheed or a Grumman, you're competing against companies much like yourself. And keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, you're still going to have to pursue and develop opportunities with your clients. And the government does a lot of effort around small business advocates in each of the agencies that you can establish a relationship with, send a capability statement with. They used to do sort of speed dating with the small business advocate for various agencies, so at least you could meet them and have some FaceTime. They're now conducting those on Zoom, so that's another way to get your products and services and company name in front of the government.
Great advice across the board there, and that's something we've definitely talked about a lot, the set-asides and the benefit of having a socioeconomic designation. Being on GSA schedule as a small business concern provides a lot of advantages for the reasons that you said. Agencies can now count task orders against GSA towards their goals, but there's other women-owned small businesses on the schedule too, so you're still going to have to compete against them. You do have an edge, obviously, if you've got a GSA schedule and you're developing new business, because you're giving the contracting professionals a faster way to access you and a way to lower their time and effort. So all really good things. And that's why if you're thinking about it right now, thinking about the GSA schedule, it's a long path, but it's definitely a worthy path to tread. So if you're a new company, brand new, but you have GSA aspirations, we definitely recommend getting that transactional history, whether it's through subcontracting or through winning small dollar contracts, which is something we've talked about in the boot camp to date, focusing on those small deals, because that counts. That's transactional history. That's proof of life in the eyes of GSA, and it'll help you get that get that contract. If you meet the 2-year requirement, but you're not sure of your eligibility, reach out to somebody like Mary Ann, and she can help walk you through the process of fit, making sure that you are going to be able to be successful and not disqualified on some, prereq that you weren't aware of. If you're considered about your own price competitiveness and this thing called the most favored customer clause that you heard Mary Ann talk about earlier, definitely something to be considered and something to be aware of, because that can have an impact. And there is some case law about, issues with, with companies not giving GSA and their GSA customers their best possible prices. Those are a little beyond the scope of our webinar today, but we probably will speak to this in some future content. So Mary Ann, I want to thank you for being with us today. I do want to let people know that you don't have to go on this GSA schedule journey alone. I don't recommend that you do. I think it's worth giving Mary Ann a call. What do you offer to people that come to you brand new? Will you give them a little consult? What do you offer them?
Yeah, pretty much I want to find out what they're trying to accomplish, because there's lots of different ways to go after government business. GSA is an easy entree point because you can do it in your own time. And as long as you provide them all the data, you're going to end up getting a schedule. But it may not be for everyone. It may be that you want to get into the state side. It may be that you want to get into becoming a subcontractor to a large federal prime contractor. It may be that you want to pursue, a couple opportunities on the beta.sam.gov. It may be that you are a manufacturer and you can do unique items and you want to do things on DLA divs. So it'll be the first conversation is around what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then I can point you in what I believe is the correct direction for you and what your goals are. And GSA, for any of those, I can walk you through each one of them and help you succeed with those goals.
Fantastic. I've sat in on some of those early calls that you do, and I can attest that they're very valuable. So listen, that's most of our time for today. If you're considering GSA scheduled contracts, I hope that you found this valuable. I definitely recommend reaching out to Mary Ann. And just in general, if you haven't already, check out that GovShop subscription. Check out that GovShop subscription. We've got really, in my opinion, the most competitive offer for opportunity matching. It'll cost you $119 to wade through SAM every month. Why not let us match that for you, give your opportunities that match your business, and then you can focus more on developing your business, which is really where you need to spend your time. Mary Ann, thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate it. I hope to do this again one day soon.
Great. It's been my pleasure, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, good luck, and we'll see you in week 9. Bye-bye.